Why are resignations at an all-time high? This seems to be the case not only in the US, but also in China, Japan, and Germany, among other countries around the world. Could this be the start of something new? In this video, we will be talking about the big why, and also what the future looks like for all of us. Let's start with first understanding the data. Now, I'm sure that we all know that as of November 2021, the share of workers who have voluntarily quit their jobs has reached a record all-time high of 3%, which is around 4,157,000 people. Now, if we compare this to a year back in November 2020, it was about 2.3%, which is a 0.7% increase. This may not seem like much looking at it in terms of percentage, but if we look at the number of people that have resigned, over a span of a year, a whopping 1,231,000 people have chosen to voluntarily resign from the workforce. We may now be telling ourselves that the pandemic had a large role to play in this new era of the Great Resignation, and you are absolutely right. However, after looking closely at the data in this chart, you will see that the quit rate has been growing incrementally ever since 2009 and 2010. With an approximate increase in 1.2% over the course of almost 10 years, which is up until 2019. Now, from 2019 till date, this rate has gone parabolic with an increase of about 1.6%. Yes, that's right. What took nearly a steady 10 years in increase took only about 2 years to break into an all-time high and continues to grow. Let's now look at the industries that have been affected by the pandemic. And before we get into a few examples, we will take you through a 4-framework business model to help you think practically about what industries may work well or not over time, so that you can make a more informed business decision. Before getting into the 4 business models, let's first characterize the 2 major aspects. The first one being location dependent, and the second one being time dependent. Location dependent takes into consideration that a business has to be closely located or in close proximity to their customers. Time-dependent takes into consideration that a business and customer have to agree on a specific time for the exchange of a good or service. Now that these 2 concepts are clear, let's look at how we can box these into 4 blocks. Block 1. If a business is high location dependent and high time dependent. Those that have to be in close proximity of location and time to the customer have suffered the most during this pandemic and continue to suffer. For example, dine-in restaurants, sporting events, concerts, and airlines. Block 2. If a business is high location dependent and low time dependent, which is essentially those that require the business to be in close proximity to the customer in order to provide a service, but don't necessarily have to meet at the same time. Businesses like self-service gas stations or self-checkout stores like a 7-Eleven or Dollar General that have this service have done slightly better. Block 3. If a business is low location dependent and high time dependent, they have a high survival probability as the business may need the provider and receiver to do business at the same time, but not at the same location. For example, delivery restaurants, or online counseling that does not require the patient to be physically present with the counselor, but does require an agreement on a fixed schedule to create an exchange of service. And lastly, Block 4. If a business is both low location and low time dependent, they have the highest growth potential as they don't need a physical presence or essentially have a time-bound agreement to the customer. This is actually where all the talent seem to be moving towards given their successful business model and emergence from the pandemic. Examples include streaming services like Netflix or Amazon Prime Video, online retailers like Amazon Shopping, or remote work service providers like graphic designing. Now, what does this mean to us? Well, for starters, remote or virtual work is here to stay. Organizations will continue to aggressively market themselves as the best place to work for, but the future, especially with the younger generation, involves not just working for an average of 6 jobs in their lifetime, but rather 6 jobs at the same time as they offer their skill sets to different companies without essentially being location or time dependent. Technology towards this is being developed at a massive rate, and we will soon witness the new era of the decentralized economy, or what is progressively being known as DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. That is, through blockchain technology, makers and creators work directly with customers and users without having to go through any platform, company, or intermediary. Sounds exciting, right? If you want to understand more about decentralized companies, you'll shortly find a link to the video in the description, or you can click the bell icon for more notifications on this topic. Now, to carry on. What does this mean for companies and the competition for scarce talent during this era-defining moment of the Great Resignation? Well, CEOs of major companies have spoken to the idea that they can no longer mandate their employees to return to a pre-pandemic work schedule because their competitors may offer a remote work schedule. And they don't necessarily want to risk losing out on talent, especially in this manner that doesn't even include a wage increase. Now, research conducted by individual companies also show that remote working has increased overall productivity, especially if employees are provided with more clarity over their duties and responsibilities. Companies are now focused on recruiting more trustworthy, highly committed, and high-performance-oriented individuals in an attempt to transition to a more flexible remote working model. Okay, so what does this mean for us employees? Do we settle for a small change? Well, let's go through a few possible changes that can occur as the ball is now in the employer's court, so to speak. Employers are looking at providing different perks. The founder and president of SGA Communications from the Chicago-based company has observed that many of the benefits that helped attract talent pre-pandemic no longer carry the same weight or even apply to a remote working environment. What was previously sold to employees as a family culture environment is no longer accepted, but rather a more transactional employer-employee relationship is preferred. It does make sense if you think about how much more time is spent working from home in comparison to the office. Employers are now looking at finally rewarding productivity instead of hours worked. Employers are now gradually allowing for a move from a 9-to-5 to a more flexible working schedule. Workers can enjoy a greater work-life balance and have autonomy over their work schedule. Simply put, you can see it as employers setting clear expectations about what work an employee is responsible for completing and not when they are responsible for reporting to work. Employers are slowly realizing that high-value monetary incentives don't work as they used to. Rather than throwing money at the issue, there is now a greater emphasis on high-value incentives over time and schedule. What this means is that having a flexible schedule, but allowing for countless meetings is not going to work. We all know that from previous research, a lot of the work that has to get done never actually happens because of the managers in their meetings. Now, just because you're working from home doesn't necessarily mean you're always available. We are now seeing an emerging growth in the culture and framework of availability, something that has worked well in multi-time zone remote positions. In this approach, meetings are planned ahead and companies have policies over meetings that can occur only during certain blocks of the day. This then creates an environment of equity and cohesion across the board. Employers have to go all in on flexibility. A recent talent index survey conducted reveals the top things employees wish to see in 2022. A few of those include flexible timings and a 4-day work week. This allows employees more time for their personal commitments, balancing childcare priorities amongst other things, which is exactly what work-life balance means. Employers have to look at providing mental health care benefits for their workers. A Health on Demand report generated by Mercer in 2021 details that about 42% of employees with access to mental health care benefits reported that they are more likely to stay at their organization. On the other hand, 44% also reported not feeling supported by their organization that don't provide these benefits. Hence, mental health should be treated with the same importance as physical space and availability. To summarize all this as a way forward, companies that work closely in an attempt to further understand their employees and show empathy in bringing about net positive change overall can then demand high self-responsibility, high conscientiousness, and self-development on the employee's part while being flexible on workplace and time. This can eventually lead to a more balanced win-win outcome for both. What do you think about how the next era will pan out? Will employers still have overall control, or will the next decade finally see a shift in balance? Leave your thoughts in the comments and let us know if you wish to further understand any other concepts, as we've covered a lot in this video. Also, do let us know if we've missed anything. We hope you found this information valuable. And if you enjoyed the video, why not subscribe so you can see more like it? Until next time.